The first thing left behind is silence. Not peaceful silence, the kind that comes after screaming has finally run out of breath. Carriage 3807 is unrecognizable. Metal panels hang loose. Blood stains the floor in streaks and pools. Bodies lie where ordinary passengers were sitting only minutes ago. And over the living, digital name tags hover like the world itself is sorting people into categories. 5 survivors remain. Kim Dokcha is one of them. He is injured, exhausted, and surrounded by people who still cannot understand what has happened. But Dokcha understands too much. He knows that this is no longer a normal subway. This is the beginning of a scenario. A world where survival is measured, recorded, and judged by something watching from beyond human reach. Then his eyes fall on Kim Namun. Namun is still alive at first, terrified, desperate, clinging to the old instinct that if he pleads hard enough, someone will save him. But Dokcha does not answer like a citizen of the old world. He answers like someone who has already seen what Namun will become if he is allowed to survive. In the world that ended moments ago, life had value simply because it was life. In this new world, that belief has become a weakness people can exploit. Dokcha makes the cold decision. The others witness it, but they do not fully understand it. To them, it is cruelty. To Dokcha, it is prevention. To the system, it is a transaction. A notification appears. Kill records are calculated. Coins are distributed. Penalties are deducted. Even the act of killing someone who no longer resists is reduced to numbers on a screen. Then comes the title that follows him like a brand. Mass murderer. Dokcha should feel more. Maybe horror. Maybe guilt so heavy, it crushes his knees. Instead, he feels strangely detached, as if part of him is still reading events from a page, rather than standing in the blood himself. And that detachment scares him more than the bodies do. Because if he can adapt this quickly, what does that make him? Outside, the train begins moving again. For a moment, the survivors think motion means rescue. But through the window, beyond the tracks and fading city lights, something enormous rises from the ruined world. A multi-headed serpent towers beside the train. The old world has not merely collapsed. A new one has been born. The survivors stare at the monster outside, waiting for the glass to shatter and the train to become a coffin. But the serpent does not strike. It roars, circles, and tests the boundary around the train like an animal pressing against invisible glass. Then, impossibly, it withdraws. To everyone else, this looks like luck. To Kim Dokcha, it is a rule. Scenarios have priority. As long as the first scenario's protection remains active, outside monsters cannot freely interfere. It is not kindness, it is stage management. The system does not want random creatures stealing the spotlight before the planned suffering can begin. Dokcha knows the monster's level is far beyond them. In the language of this ruined world, it would be classified as a 7th-grade threat, a creature that could erase ordinary survivors before they even understood what killed them. And yet, that creature is not the most frightening thing here. Because above the scenario, beyond the subway, beyond the ruined city, there are watchers. Constellations, ancient names, mythic beings, legendary forces, and cosmic spectators observing humanity through channels operated by the Dokebi. To them, this is not a disaster. It is content, a story, a performance where human lives become entertainment, investment, and influence. And Dokcha has somehow attracted 21 of them. For a beginner channel, that number is absurd. It explains the Dokebi's strange excitement. It explains the rewards arriving from nowhere, and it explains the hostility that follows Namun's death. Some constellations like Namun. Some expected him to survive. Some may have had plans for him. Dokcha has interrupted those plans. A notification arrives, faint hostility from unseen beings. Another follows, sponsorship coins from those entertained by Dokcha's actions. In one breath, he is cursed and rewarded. That is when Dokcha understands the true shift. He is no longer merely the reader observing events from outside the story. He has become an object of observation. The audience has noticed him. And in a world ruled by viewers, being noticed can save your life or mark you for death. After the first bloodshed, the survivors begin looking at one another differently. Yusanga approaches Dokcha with gratitude and concern, but her kindness only makes his guilt feel sharper. She sees someone who protected them. Dokcha sees the people he failed to save and the people he chose not to save. Then something strange happens around her. Bugs gather where they should not. A small environmental anomaly, almost harmless compared to the monsters outside. But Dokja recognizes the danger in small things. In this world, even insects can become keys, traps, or proof of value. That thought brings him to the boy, Li Giyang, a child who should not have to understand death, yet is already trapped inside a game where hesitation can be fatal. Dokja does not approach him with heroic warmth. He approaches carefully, measuring fear, usefulness, and timing. Then he asks the only question that matters in the new world. Does the boy want to live? The moment is gentle, but not innocent. Dokja knows he is being hypocritical. He can kill one person and extend a hand to another. He can call it strategy, and still feel the weight of it in his chest. But that contradiction may be the only humanity he has left. The constellations approve. Coins fall into his possession, as if compassion has become a spectacle worth tipping. Nearby, Han Myung-oh survives, with the stunned disbelief of a man whose money and position no longer mean anything. The Dokkaebi appears again, cheerful in the middle of horror, and congratulates the survivors for clearing the first scenario. It explains sponsorship like a gift from powerful beings to pitiful humans. But Dokja knows better. Sponsorship is not charity, it is investment. The constellations do not simply help the weak. They select vessels, shape outcomes, and attach themselves to humans who might become interesting enough to follow. The survivors hear the word sponsor and imagine hope. Dokja hears it and thinks of chains. The next screen that appears before Kim Dokja is not a mission. It is a temptation. Sponsor selection. 4 constellation titles glow in front of him, each hiding a true name behind symbolic words. The abyssal black flame dragon, the demon-like judge of fire, the secretive plotter, the prisoner of the golden headband. To most survivors, even one offer would feel like a miracle. Yu Sanga receives 2 and is considered unbelievably lucky. Dokja receives 4, and because he is the only reader, he understands how dangerous that is. The abyssal black flame dragon promises overwhelming early power. It's the sort of sponsor that can turn a weak human into a weapon before the weaker scenarios can crush them. But Dokja knows the cost. Use that kind of force too often, and the mind begins to crack. Rage becomes easier. Violence becomes natural. Eventually, the person using the power may no longer be the person who accepted it. Then there is the demon-like judge of fire. The title sounds wicked, but Dokja knows symbols can mislead. Fire and judgment point toward a being closer to divine punishment than simple evil. An archangelic force, radiant and terrifying, carrying the weight of scales and flame. But absolute justice can be as restrictive as a prison. Power that judges sin may also judge the hand that wields it. Why would that being look at Dokja? Why would a constellation connected to Namwoon now turn its attention to the man who killed him? The secretive plotter is even stranger. Its power seems unclear, almost underwhelming, its status uncertain. But the fact that it appears so early raises more questions than answers. Dokja has read the original flow of this world, and this offer does not belong here. Unknown variables are sometimes more dangerous than obvious monsters. Finally, the prisoner of the golden headband, Sun Wukong, the great sage, heaven's equal, a legendary being of absurd destructive power, bound by a symbol of restraint and suffering. Dokja remembers the kind of strength associated with that name, the ability to wipe away armies of monsters and incarnations with casual force. So why would such a being reach for him now? The selection window glows like a doorway to power, but Dokja does not see only strength. He sees madness, restrictions, hidden agendas, and the possibility of losing ownership of his own story. The Dokkaebi gives them 10 minutes. 10 minutes to breathe. 10 minutes to panic quietly. 10 minutes to pretend they are not standing inside the ruins of civilization. That is when Lee Hyun-sung steps forward. A soldier, but not in the comforting way people imagine soldiers during disasters. He has no unit to contact, no orders from above, no functioning chain of command. His uniform means less with every passing second. Yet his body, discipline, and sincerity make him immediately valuable. He thanks Dokja with a grip strong enough to prove he is not an ordinary passenger. Dokja decides then that Lee Hyun-sung must come with him, not because Dokja is sentimental, because in the original story, Lee Hyun-sung is someone who can endure, someone who can become a wall when everything else collapses. But not everyone accepts Dokja's authority. Han Myung-oh, still clinging to the corporate world, tries to speak from a position that no longer exists. Deputy manager, workplace senior. Titles that once controlled behavior, titles that now sound absurd beside corpses, monsters, and system windows. Dokja cuts through it coldly. This is not an office anymore. The sentence is simple, but it breaks something important. The old hierarchy is dead. In the new world, authority does not come from a job title. It comes from information, strength, usefulness, and the ability to keep people alive. Dokja gathers the survivors and forces them to face the interface itself. The main scenario was not a dream. It demanded proof of value. It rewarded death. It punished failure with death. Every person here survived because they adapted faster than someone else. The group falls silent. Some still want to deny it. Some want to call it fantasy. Lee Hyunsung, shaken but rational, looks to Dokja for direction, and Dokja gives the only answer that matters. They have to escape. Outside the train, the world burns under the shadow of the serpent. Inside the train, the survivors finally begin to understand. Waiting is not safety. Waiting is just dying more slowly. The escape route is not simple. Broken doors line the carriage like failed chances. Some are jammed, some are warped from explosions. Every step forward feels like choosing which unknown disaster to trigger. Then the survivors learn what waits beyond one sealed door. The sole survivor of carriage 3707. Dokja knows what that means, and the realization tightens around his chest. This is not just another passenger. Not just another variable. The person behind that door is connected to the original center of the story. The true protagonist. Before anyone can process that, an explosion tears through the compartment. Fire and debris rip into the air. The old protective barrier has ended, and the train is no longer a sealed stage. The system reacts with new alerts. Difficulty increases. The scenario shifts from barely survivable to actively hostile. Then the dead begin to change. Blue aura coils around corpses. Black ether spreads across the ground like resentment made visible. The hatred and fear left behind by the dead do not disappear. They ferment. They gather. They rise. Yu Sangda sees it first. The bodies are moving. Zombies are not merely monsters here. They are the remains of people who failed the first scenario, dragged back by corrupted energy as a punishment for the living. The survivors are forced to face the people they stepped over to survive. And then, as if the system wants to make sure no one misunderstands the escalation, another notification appears. The demonic people have awakened. At Oksu Station, shadowy figures begin to converge. Ghost-like forms drift through smoke and flame. Dokja senses the attack before the others fully see it, and orders everyone down. A massive serpent erupts into the scene. It is no longer enough to survive the rules. Now the rules are opening the door to monsters, undead, and the protagonist who should not yet be standing in front of them. The survivors find one door that might still open. Might is not enough. Dokja considers spending coins to strengthen himself, but stops. In the early scenarios, coins are lifelines. Spend too fast, and you survive one door, only to die at the next one. He needs a better option. That option is Lee Hyunsung. Dokja asks him to use the power he has not yet learned to control. Hyunsung hesitates, because having a skill and understanding it are very different things. But the system reveals what Dokja already hoped to see. Lee Hyunsung is sponsored by the Master of Steel. His stats are solid, his soldier skills are practical. Bayonet, camouflage, patience, and most importantly, a stigma. Great mountain push. To Hyunsung, these are confusing words floating in the air. To Dokja, they are confirmation that part of the original story still remains intact. Hyunsung focuses. Green energy gathers around him. For a second, he looks less like a confused survivor and more like the foundation of something unbreakable. Then he pushes. The door gives way. The moment is small compared to gods and monsters, but for the group, it is everything. Trust rises. Understanding deepens. The system even records the bond forming between Dokja and Hyunsung, as if human cooperation is another stat to be measured. But Dokja knows the door opening is not the end of their problem. It is the beginning. The barrier around carriage 3707 is about to break. The survivors rush forward, but the Dokkaebi appears with irritation instead of applause. They were told to rest. They moved early. The next stage is not fully prepared. And yet, the system adapts. The second scenario arrives. Escape. Cross the bridge. Reach Oksu Station. 20 minutes, 200 coins. Failure hidden. The bridge named by the scenario is supposed to be broken, but when Dokja looks ahead, it is still intact. A loophole opens in the timing of fate. If they run now, they can escape before the bridge becomes the death trap the scenario expects it to be. For the first time in a long while, Dogja sees a path. Not safety, not victory, just a path. The bridge ahead has not collapsed yet. The scenario describes it as broken, but reality has not caught up to the script. That means they are early. It means the system's intended disaster has a delay. It means they can cheat fate by running faster than tragedy. The survivors sprint. Behind them, the train burns. Ahead, Oksu Station flickers through smoke and explosions. Every step across the bridge is a gamble. But at their current pace, Dogja calculates they can make it. 200 meters, maybe less. If no new variable appears, they live. Then, the river begins to turn. A whirlpool opens beside the bridge, wide enough to swallow hope itself. The water blackens, pressure builds, and from the depths rises an ichthyosaur-like monster, far larger than the creatures Dogja expected at this stage. A sea commander. The early scenario rules should prevent this kind of monster from targeting constellation incarnations directly, but Dogja sees the loophole immediately. It does not need to kill them. It only needs to destroy the bridge. The monster strikes. The structure screams beneath them. Concrete splits. Rails twist. Survivors stumble over bodies and debris as the path under their feet begins to separate from the world. Then, a tiny dokebi appears, almost cheerful, mocking the simplicity of the escape. An easy game is boring, so it changes the mood. The bridge breaks. A blast throws Dogja into smoke and pain. For a moment, he loses the thread of the world. When he comes back to himself, his head is ringing, his body is battered, and the route to Oksu Station has been severed. Lee Gil-young and Lee Hyun-sung have made it across. Dogja has not. Beside him are Yu Sung-ga and Han Myung-oh. The broken bridge should be the end. Then light appears. A beam of power cuts through smoke and ruin, forming a temporary path where no path should exist. A bridge made not of steel or concrete, but intervention. Deus ex machina. In stories, that phrase means an impossible rescue. In this world, it means something far more expensive. A constellation has interfered directly with the scenario, paying a tremendous cost to bend the stage for one human. The human is Yu Sung-ga. Her constellation has acted for her. That alone should not happen so casually. Constellations may sponsor, observe, and reward, but direct intervention drains them. It is a desperate move, the kind made only when a chosen incarnation matters more than the price. But the miracle is not free for the survivors either. A rule appears. The bridge can be crossed only by an even number of people. If the count is wrong, the path disappears. Hope becomes arithmetic. One mistake turns salvation into empty air. Yu Sung-ga suddenly clutches her head, overwhelmed by pain or pressure from the intervention. Dokja moves to check her sponsor, trying to use the information available to him. He expects data, a name, a hint. Instead, the system refuses. Her information cannot be read. That should not be possible. Either Yu Sung-ga's sponsor is unusual, or some kind of mental barrier protects her connection from inspection. For Dokja, who has survived by knowing more than everyone else, ignorance is more frightening than any monster. Then Yu Sung-ga cries out. Not because of the bridge, because something is behind him. Dokja turns too late. A blow crashes into him and sends him down, the world tilting violently as the miracle bridge glows above the broken tracks. Someone has chosen this exact moment to attack. Pain clears the fog in Dokja's head. He cannot afford to spiral. Not now. Not while the bridge timer runs, monsters move, and someone strong enough to crush concrete has just attacked him from behind. The figure before him is armed, controlled, and wrapped in a crusher that ordinary survivors do not have. Returner Yu Jong-hyuk. The name lands inside Dokja like a memory from another life. This is the man who should stand at the center of the story. The one who dies, returns, repeats, and carries the tragedy of countless failed worlds inside him. Returners do not simply survive time. Time damages them. Every regression scrapes away trust. Every betrayal becomes a prediction. Every death makes mercy feel less useful. By the time Yu Jung-hyuk reaches this point, his personality has already begun to deteriorate under the weight of repetition. And now that damaged protagonist is staring at Dokja like a threat. Around them, black ether continues to twist humans into demonic forms. The system classifies some of these infected beings as ninth-grade human-type demonic people, mutations born from corruption rather than ordinary death. The battlefield is no longer just physical. It is psychological, spiritual, and systemic. A strange barrier blocks vision nearby, similar to the obstruction seen in the subway. The world is narrowing again. Sight is limited. Movement is restricted. And in that pressure cooker, Yu Jinghyuk grabs Dokja and demands his identity. Dokja answers calmly. That calm only makes Yu more suspicious. He notices Dokja's resilience, his attitude, the way he uses coins properly, the way he speaks like someone who knows more than he should. Dokja tries to turn the confrontation, even catching Yu's hand in a gesture that feels almost absurdly intimate in the middle of violence. For a second, aggression becomes psychological warfare. The system records Yu Jinghyuk's wariness rising. That is the first victory Dokja wins against him. Not by overpowering the protagonist. For Kim Dokja, Yu Jinghyuk is not just a dangerous man, he is history. Dokja has read his suffering across thousands of chapters. He has admired him, hated him, defended him, cursed him, and followed him when no one else cared. There were times when Yu Jinghyuk felt more real to Dokja than people standing beside him in the office. And now that fictional man is real enough to break his bones. The emotional contradiction is almost unbearable. How do you fight someone you once rooted for? How do you negotiate with a protagonist who has no reason to trust a reader? Yu Jinghyuk questions how Dokja survived the subway. His instincts are too sharp. He knows the first scenario should have forced humans into murder. He knows survival should have required blood. Dokja decides to answer with a truth that sounds like a joke. He survived by killing insects. A loophole, a hidden interpretation of the scenario condition. Proof of value did not specify human life. The system accepted smaller lives. It counted them. To Yu Jinghyuk, this answer is shocking, because it means Dokja did not merely get lucky. He understood the rules at a level most people never reached. He read the wording, found the gap, and used it. That is when Dokja's unique perspective evolves. The system acknowledges that his understanding of Yu Jinghyuk has deepened. The second tier of omniscient reader's point of view opens like a door in his mind. Dokja is not physically stronger than Yu, but information is his blade. He studies the discrepancies, the survivors who should not be alive, the deaths that should not have happened, the altered flow of carriage 3807. He considers whether Yu can be used as an ally, whether he can be manipulated, or whether if Yu becomes too dangerous, he must be removed. The thought is grim, but the new world does not reward pure admiration. Dokja starts tracing the contradiction back to one moment: the explosion, the insect case, the chaos in the next carriage. He was lucky because he saw Li Gyoyong's insects scatter. That tiny accident gave him the method to clear the first scenario without killing a human. But luck in one place became catastrophe somewhere else. In the original flow, carriage 3807 should have become a brutal battle royale. Kim Na-moon should have dominated. Lee Hyun-sung should have survived alongside him. The future had a shape. Now that shape is broken. Na-moon is dead. Others lived who should not have. People died in ways Dokja did not fully intend. The explosion rewrote the pattern, and Dokja cannot escape the question pressing against his ribs. Was it his fault? He tries to reason through it. The scenario logic does not match what he expected. Too many events feel convenient. Too many outcomes moved around him as if an unseen hand was forcing a new composition. But guilt does not vanish just because a situation is complicated. Then the perspective shifts. It notices his abnormal adaptation speed. It recognizes that he adjusts too quickly for a beginner. It suspects his role in Na-moon's death. It analyzes him not as a normal survivor, not even as a useful incarnation, but as something more unstable. Dangerous. That word matters. Useful tools are kept. Dangerous variables are controlled, tested, or erased. When another figure tries to negotiate or steer the group toward a simple retreat, Dokja's suspicion snaps into action. He grabs them, restricts them, and refuses the easy path. Peace in this world is often just a trap with a softer voice. The scenario has become too convenient. Yu Jinghyuk does not rely on suspicion alone. He has a way to confirm hidden truths. Sage's Eye, an SS-tier inspection skill, powerful enough to see beyond ordinary character windows, beyond surface stats, beyond what most survivors can hide. In the hands of a returner, it is terrifying. A skill like that can expose lies before they become plans. Dokja understands the danger immediately. If Yu Jinghyuk reads too much, Dokja loses his greatest advantage: his knowledge, his abnormality, maybe even the secret that he himself does not fully understand. But before the inspection can reach him, something activates. Fourth wall. The skill rises like an invisible barrier between Dokcha and Yu's gaze. Sage's eye strikes it and fails. For a heartbeat, the world seems to stop. Yu Jonghyuk's power should not be blocked so easily. Dokcha should not possess a defense capable of denying one of the strongest inspection skills. Yet the system confirms it. The skill has been stopped. The protagonist cannot read the reader. And Dokcha realizes the most frightening part. He does not fully know what fourth wall is. It protects him, but it also separates him. It keeps the story at a distance. It may be the reason he can remain calm when others break. It may also be the thing that makes him less human. Yu Jonghyuk reacts with menace, and the confrontation threatens to explode again. But the scenario does not pause for character drama. The escape timer is still running. Only minutes remain. The bridge is detached. The penalty for failure is unknown. The monster is still part of the battlefield. The survivors are divided. Yu Sangha's sponsor remains unreadable. And the true protagonist now knows Kim Dokcha is hiding behind something even an SS tier skill cannot pierce. This is no longer just a fight to reach Aksu Station. It is the moment the written future begins to collapse under the weight of one impossible reader.